Good morning, fellow Rams. This is a special program by Hank for our armed forces and on one of our vets. And I would request, in light of that, one of our vets lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm going to turn this over to Hank, and he's got a long program, so here you are.
Thank you, Bill. Before we get started on the program, I would like to have every person in this room that was in the military in any branch stand up, please. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, let's give it all a hand. I just want to say that all you guys and civilians as well, you're really the heart and soul of our American freedom. And I think all of us Rams here want to salute every one of you because you all stepped up, won a victory that I'm sure Europe is happy about, and I know we in the U.S. here are very proud of what you all did. So thank you very much. I want to start the program out by introducing a fellow Ram. Leo Dumichel joined the Ram here. I don't know what year. What year was it, Leo?
61.
Yeah, that was you're one of the early Rams. So many of you know Leo well because he's a longtime member. But Leo's been inactive for some time, and some of you new members don't know him or don't know him well. So I want to introduce him as our special guest today. And Leo participated at Normandy with the famed 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. And Leo was engaged in every major offensive in the European campaign. He was in combat from 1943 until the war's end. He fought the Germans at Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, Normandy, Holland, the Ardennes Forest in the Battle of the Bulge, and then he was involved in the final push all the way across Germany to the Elbe River. And then after the fall of Berlin, he was selected by General George Patton to serve in Berlin post-war in the All-American Honor Guard, a great honor. And Leo had some stories to tell about what happened there in Berlin immediately after the war. It was not a good place to be. All told, Leo survived 8 World War II campaigns. And after you see this film today, you'll well, first of all, you'll wonder how he did it, but secondly, you'll admire him even more because many of his friends did not make it. And finally, for those of you that don't know, there's an autobiography of Leo's life on YouTube that can be viewed by searching under the search phrase Pathfinder-Leo Dumichel. And I encourage those of you that have not seen it to take a look. It really tells a lot about Leo's exploits. So Leo, on behalf of all these Ram members here, I want to thank you for joining us today. I selected this film. Actually, I found it on YouTube. I don't know if anyone here has seen it, but this film, in my opinion, shows what really had to happen to make Normandy happen, and it shows actually real film on the Normandy campaign, all the way from its early part to its completion. So I want all of you to kind of make yourself comfortable. The film lasts about 38 minutes, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying when you see the film.
This is the story of the operation which began the assault on the continent of Europe.
The 9th Troop Carrier Command will transport and resupply parachute and glider elements of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Division and will be prepared to transport elements of the British 1st Airborne Division as directed. The U.S. 101st Airborne Division will begin landing approximately 30 minutes prior to civil twilight on the morning of D-Day to assist the 4th Division in the initial assault and capture the town of Carentan. The U.S. 82nd Airborne Division will land to the immediate west of the 101st for the purpose of preventing the movement of enemy reserves to the east and north.
Simple, isn't it? This mission, which reads so easily, calls for an attack from England on the continent of Europe. Festung Europa, walled in by the formidable defense in depth of the Atlantic Wall. Mined, trapped, bristling with gun emplacements and fortifications. An impregnable barrier, said the Nazis. The combined chiefs of staff decided that frontal assault alone would not crack Fortress Europe. The Atlantic Wall must be vaulted and the cracking process begun from the rear. The initial effort by land, sea, and air would be made in this area, spearheaded by troop carrier and airborne forces. But before the D-Day, there must be a number of lesser D-Days. The first large-scale airborne operation was performed in conjunction with the assault on Sicily, 10 July 1943. Taking off from fields in Africa for dropping zones in Sicily, troop carrier units transported by glider and aircraft, units of the 1st British and the U.S. 82nd Airborne Divisions. Almost a year before this operation, a troop carrier group transported a parachute infantry battalion from England to start the invasion of North Africa. But the invasion of Sicily was the first real test for troop carrier units, which had trained in maneuvers in Texas, the Carolinas, and England. To the lessons of Sicily was added the experience of the highly successful operation in the Markham Valley of New Guinea, in which troop carrier and airborne forces showed the practicability of a well-planned daylight operation. Back in the United States, many lessons learned from the operations in Sicily, Markham Valley, and Salerno were made a part of training and maneuvers. The Griswold nose was developed to protect the glider in rough landings. parachute arrestor was adopted to permit landing the glider in restricted areas. The intercom between tow plane and glider was introduced. Many types of combat aircraft were suitable for towing the CG-4A glider. The B-25 was used. The P-38 performed its task well. And even the PBY became a tow plane. Note the takeoff of the PBY before the glider. Here's a B-17 in dual tow. And a triple tow by a C-54. Airborne aviation engineers trained in anticipation of their probable use for building landing strips and rebuilding bombed airdromes in France. Troop carrier airplanes are converted in a matter of minutes into ambulance ships. And from lessons learned overseas, grew the doctrine expressed in War Department Circular 113, employment of airborne and troop carrier forces. Doctrine was put into practice, and Circular 113 became the blueprint for all future airborne operations.
Airborne and troop carrier units are theater of operation forces. Their employment must be an integral part of the basic plan made by the agency directing all land, sea, and air forces in the operation. The coordinating directive must be issued in time to allow realistic preparation and training by troop carrier and airborne units for the specific operation. Airborne troops must be employed in mass and the bulk of the force landed in as small an area as possible. The use of highly trained Pathfinder teams dropped in advance to mark dropping zones and glider landing zones is essential. Procedures must be prescribed which will ensure that troop carrier aircraft on course at proper altitudes and on correct time schedules are not fired upon by friendly forces.
Power pilots and the staffs of operational training groups, which were committed to the United Kingdom, were trained in flying procedures of the United Kingdom before they left the States. Low flying was emphasized, designed to prevent early detection by the enemy. Air crews had to fly through a corridor of flak, pinpointed by searchlights. Every aspect of operations in the United Kingdom, flying control, air-sea rescue, supply, British navigation, weather, all phases of theater training were covered before the units departed overseas. airborne troops continue in their specialized tactics. Glider pilots are trained to stay in action with them until evacuated. Meanwhile, in England, Supreme Headquarters was formed. The planning phase changed to the manning phase. The Airborne Planning Committee, headed by the Air Commander-in-Chief of the Allied Expeditionary Air Force, was composed of representatives from all the services involved in the airborne operation: Navy, ground, and air, as well as the Troop Carrier Command and the airborne divisions concerned. Between ground and air is necessary for accuracy in delivery of resupply containers. These men are Pathfinders, a combined team of troop carrier crews and parachute technicians who will drop on objective areas and set up homing devices for the main aerial convoy. Teams consist of 9 to 14 technical men and 5 security personnel. The Pathfinder School, starting without precedent and table of organization, and with little equipment, turned out 50 trained troop carrier crews and 260 British and American airborne officers and men by D-Day. Pathfinder airplanes were equipped with every navigational aid used by troop carrier, and the flight crews and airborne teams received 30 to 60 hours training in their use, both in the air and on the ground. Each Pathfinder team is equipped with 8 specially designed holophane lights from which DZ light tees are made. By D-Day, crews who had lived, trained, and were briefed together could navigate under instrument conditions to within 600 to 800 yards of a pinpointed position in unfamiliar territory. Airborne infantry file into buses for their last land-borne ride until D-Day. These hangars are their barracks until they climb aboard the airplanes and gliders. New equipment is issued. There's nothing to do now but kill time. Nothing, that is, but to keep at the peak and await orders. And grab a few moments to read letters from home and write a few lines. But this is business. And you want to be sure you're in business when the time comes. So you take inventory of your stock and trade and keep everything clean and shining and ready. Overnight, the ships blossomed out in their new war paint. On D-2, invasion markings were applied. Another lesson from Sicily. Invasion money revealed the objective. By now, the High Command insisted that individuals should know their destination. Hours before takeoff time, parapacks were assembled and delivered to the C-47s. LSTs received their quotas of troops who will cross the beaches and move forward if troop carrier and airborne have done their job. One glider regiment of the 101st was to go in by boat, as were some attached and supporting units of both divisions. The lift, or the required aircraft and gliders, was not available to put them in by air as early as needed. D-Day -1, and time narrows down. Gliders for the first night's operation are assembled for the takeoff. Glider pilots are told to assemble at division headquarters after landing for evacuation to England. An airborne general has a final talk with his men. Troop carrier and airborne have their final inspection. More than a dozen fields, paratroopers march to their ships. Each pilot has been furnished a list of his passengers. Parapacks are checked. There is a message from the Supreme Commander.
You are about to embark on a great crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you, and the hopes and prayers of all liberty-loving people go with you.
pilot and crew chief make a final check of the parapacks. And here's another final check, this time by the jump master just before the men go aboard. This trooper will drop his British leg pack loaded with demolition supplies just before he lands. At dusk, Pathfinder teams board the ships that will show the way into enemy territory. .925 troop-laden aircraft will home tonight on navigation aids set up by these Pathfinders. This is 1 minute out of 1 hour in one day in the world's history that has rarely been equaled. These are the first ships to take off in the airborne invasion of Fortress Europe. First Pathfinder ship is airborne at 21:54. As the Pathfinders head for the coast of France, other C-47s move into position for their takeoff at the head of the runway. .30 minutes after the Pathfinders take off, the first serials of C-47s follow on the invasion path. As troop carrier aircraft cross the channel, the Allied invasion fleet has already weighed anchor. Sealing had been forecast as 3,000 en route, clearing at DZ, but actually is variable, 500 to 1,000. Visibility is poor.
Stand up. Hook up.
Ready with the red. Show the red.
Stand to door.
Ready with the green. Show the green.
Go. unit landed squarely on the German 91st Infantry Division and other enemy troops. These enemy units were on maneuvers and were already occupying their assigned defensive positions. Surprise was gained only by the leading parachute unit, and subsequent serials found themselves under practically continuous ground and anti-aircraft fire while crossing the peninsula and upon landing. 821 airplane loads, 13,000 paratroops were delivered into DZs in less than 2 hours.
Troop carrier had not planned or trained for a night glider landing, but more panzers moving into the peninsula made 100 glider loads of anti-tank guns and troops essential for the initial phases. It was estimated that only 50% of personnel and equipment would be available for use after the landing. This calculated risk was accepted. The serials were made up of the reliable CG-4As, which were easier to put into strange fields in darkness. 0200. Time for the gliders to go. The coastal defenses are softened up for the beach landings. Daybreak. The naval bombardment continues. Marauders went in ahead of the troops to blast enemy coastal installations. Priority number 1, air supremacy, had been obtained a long time before D-Day. The 8th and 9th Air Forces had accomplished that. Standing offshore, the invasion craft wait as Allied planes blast the coast. Allied surface ships come in. Go on to the next phase, the bombing and crippling of roads, bridges, waterways, railheads, the isolation of a battlefield. And the battlefield is isolated. No German reserves come through to the coast in any strength. The beachhead holds and grows as the Air Force piles up a record number of sorties. Fighters blast every target that moves on enemy ground. Any target of opportunity is legitimate prey. Record sorties are flown by the fighters on D-Day. Back in England, the next glider serials are being marshaled for the takeoff. The C-47s are doing double duty. Back from the paratroop drops, they're ready to take off with gliders. Dual tow had been practiced in the States, but it was not used in this operation due to the extra time necessary for air assembly and to the additional marshalling space which it would require on the aerodromes. Hard-pressed paratroopers who went into action in darkness earlier today are depending on reinforcements and heavier equipment, which will be delivered by these glider serials. 3 groups of fighter cover are in takeoff position at aerodromes to the south. Coordinated British effort was made simultaneously by the British 6th Airborne Division, transported by RAF 38 Group on objectives around Caen. Particularly interesting was the delivery of 8.5-ton tanks of a Recce regiment in 30 huge Hamilcar gliders. 29 of the 30 tanks were in action within 10 minutes after they were landed. Air superiority makes possible this daylight operation. ACAC ended a mission for this friendly airplane. Two-way traffic, and it's congested. These are areas flooded by the Germans. Parachutes and gliders from the previous serials. The gliders cut loose from their tow planes. We have fighter cover all the way to the landing zone. Not even a lone German fighter was able to sneak through. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions were in action 33 and 24 days respectively. The 82nd, having captured Sault-Mère-Église and secured the bridgehead across the Mer de Ré River, destroyed other river crossings, protected the flank of the 7th Army Corps, and drove west to the Douve River. The 101st seized the areas assigned it, destroyed bridges, and drove on to Carentan to establish a defense area there. To Troop Carrier, the commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division sent this commendation.
Under most difficult conditions, including landing under fire in enemy-occupied terrain, glider pilots did a splendid job. On the ground, they rendered most willing and effective service, providing local protection for the division command post during the most critical period when the division was under heavy attack from 3 sides. Please express to all elements of your command who brought the division in by glider or parachute, or who performed resupply missions for us, our admiration for their coolness under fire, their determination to overcome all obstacles, and for their magnificent spirit of cooperation.
Back from Normandy, these men would have faced further tests. How much they had learned will be history. History made by an airborne army.
I think everyone will agree that that film did a really good job of explaining and showing what really happened and how much effort went into this. You hear these countless stories that it wasn't well planned. Well, I take great exception to that. It was a tremendously planned operation. But what I would like to do now is I'd like to have everyone stand up. I've prepared a little bit of an acknowledgement for those that did not make it at Normandy. So please stand.
Hey! Hi! Ready! Aim! Fire! Ready! Aim! Fire! Ready! Reset! Pose!
To cap off my program for today, first of all, did you guys enjoy it? I thought it was appropriate because our dear friend Leo is a RAM member, and he was a very active participant. As a matter of fact, for years he worked with Steve Bennett on the giving flowers out every week. So he was very active. So I thought we should do something for Leo. And I thought for a long time, and I'd like to have Leo and Richard Hillary stand up. And I think it's appropriate that we give Richard Hillary a round of applause for his contribution to the Pathfinder video and his work that he's done helping me put this together. So please give him a round of applause. Now, Leo, your service to our nation was and is profound. Normandy was a large part of that service. So we here at the San Luis Obispo RAM, Branch 2, we would like to present you with a small token acknowledging that day in 1944, and actually those days, many, many days, not just June the 6th. But that's when the tide of the Allied battle began to change. And it changed the course of the campaign, which went on for quite a while, to free Europe. So at this time, I would like to present you with a special medal. It's going to pin that medal on your uniform, and on the screen, you will see a picture of the medal, and you can read what it's all about. It's a D-Day commemorative medal, and it was struck to honor all who landed or served in support of U.S. forces during the D-Day invasion, June 1944. The medal shows troops, paratroopers, air and naval forces assaulting the coast of France. And we hereby award it to Sergeant Leo Dumichel on this day, June the 13th, 2019, by the San Luis Obispo RAM Branch 2. So thank you, Leo. You are a great person. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to do. I don't know if any of you picked up on it, how would you? But the young man that was playing readily at the beginning of our program and did a beautiful job on taps here at the end is my grandson, Kevin Cross. And initially, I wanted to have him here in person. Kevin is a senior at Loyola Marymount, and he's in the jazz band there. He's a wonderful musician. But who would know this, but his lawyer wouldn't let him off. So we filmed this, and I put it into the video so we could see it here today. But as a part of that, I put together this plaque for Kevin. It says, "Thank you, Kevin Cross, in appreciation for your performance of taps for the RAM program on June 13, 2019, about the World War II Battle of Normandy on D-Day, June 6, 1944. And I can assure you that I will present this plaque to him the first time he deems to visit me. So thank you very much. That's my program for today.
very much for a very, very wonderful program, and it gave me chills to see that movie. And Leo, thank you very much, man. And thanks for all the vets.
Thank you.